The rain outside our small apartment window felt louder than usual that night. Not because it was heavy, but because the room between us was silent. I sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped together, staring at the floor like it might give me answers. My wife, Emily, stood near the door with her coat already on. She wasn't crying. That hurt more than tears ever could. "I can't do this anymore," she said calmly. I looked up. "Do what?" She let out a short, tired laugh. "Wait, hope, believe you'll change." Those words hit harder than any insult. We had met years ago when we were both young and dreaming. I had promised her I would become something, someone. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't cruel. I just hadn't arrived yet. And in her world, effort without results meant failure. "I work every day," I said quietly. "You know that." "Yes," she replied. "But you're still in the same place." Her eyes moved around the apartment, the cracked wall, the second-hand furniture, the life she had grown ashamed of. "I need stability," she continued. "I need growth. I need a future that feels secure." "And I'm not that future?" I asked. She hesitated for a second, just one. Then she nodded. "I don't believe you'll ever change." That sentence destroyed something inside me. She wasn't angry. She wasn't dramatic. She had already left me in her heart long before this conversation. "There's someone else?" I asked. She didn't deny it. "He's consistent," she said. "He's already successful." So that was it. Not betrayal fueled by passion, but replacement fueled by doubt. She picked up her bag, paused at the door, and said the words that would follow me for years. "I hope you find yourself one day." Then she walked out. The door closed softly. But the sound echoed like a gunshot in my chest. That night I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't chase. I sat alone, in the dark apartment, and finally understood something painful but powerful. Love doesn't leave because you fail. It leaves when people stop believing you'll rise. And right there, on that cold, silent night, I made a decision. If the world thought I would never change, then I would change so completely that they'd regret ever doubting me. Chapter 2. The Quiet Work of Becoming. The morning after she walked away, the apartment felt larger and emptier at the same time. Silence pressed against the walls like fog. I stood by the window with a cup of coffee gone cold, watching the city wake up without noticing me. Yesterday, her words had landed softly but cut deep. "You'll never change." She hadn't shouted. She hadn't cried. She had simply decided, quietly, firmly, and left. That day I didn't chase her. It surprised even me. Instead, I sat at the small desk by the window and opened my notebook. Not a dramatic gesture. No vows written in bold ink. Just a list. What I was good at. What I wasn't. What I kept postponing because it was uncomfortable. The list was honest in a way apologies never were. I wrote until my hand cramped. The truth was ugly but clear. I had been waiting for motivation to save me, for someone else's belief to light the path. I had mistaken potential for progress. She wasn't wrong to doubt the version of me that existed then. But doubt, I realized, didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning of work. The first change was boring. I woke up early. Not heroically early, just early enough to stop rushing. I ran because it was the simplest promise I could keep. One foot then the other. I learned that discipline didn't feel like inspiration. It felt like routine. I cooked instead of ordering in. I studied the industry I'd complained about but never mastered. Every night I read until my eyes burned. Not because I felt brilliant, but because I felt behind. There were days I failed. Days I skipped the run. Nights I stared at the ceiling, replaying her voice. But the next morning I returned to the desk. The notebook filled with dates and small check marks. No fireworks. Just accumulation. Weeks passed. Then months. People noticed before I did. My manager stopped explaining basics and started asking my opinion. A colleague asked how I had solved a problem she'd been stuck on for weeks. When I spoke in meetings, my voice didn't shake. Not because I was fearless, but because I was prepared. Preparation, I learned, is quiet confidence. One evening, I ran into her by accident at a bookstore cafe. She was laughing with friends, a lightness I remembered well. For a moment, the old ache returned. I wondered if she saw me differently now, if she noticed the straighter posture, the calmer eyes. Then I realized something important. I didn't need her to notice. I nodded politely when our eyes met. She smiled, surprised, then uncertain. I turned back to my book. The moment passed without drama, and my chest felt strangely calm. Growth, I understood, wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about not needing to prove anything at all. Opportunity arrived disguised as extra work. A project no one wanted landed on my desk late on a Friday. The timeline was tight, the expectations unclear. I accepted without negotiating because I saw what it was, a test. I spent nights refining details others ignored. I asked questions that felt uncomfortable. I built contingencies instead of excuses. When the presentation ended, the room stayed quiet for a beat too long. Then the director nodded. That nod changed things. Promotions don't always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they arrive as trust. My responsibilities expanded. So did my network. People who once overlooked me began looping me into conversations where decisions were made. I kept my head down, not out of humility, but out of focus. Success, when it finally showed its face, was understated. A better office, a stronger title, a paycheck that made the numbers in my notebook look small. I moved into a place with light and space. Not as a symbol, but as a reward for consistency. The mansion she would later stand outside of began, quietly, as a signed lease and a sense of earned peace. And still, I didn't reach out. I learned that restraint was power, too. One night, months later, my phone buzzed with a familiar name. I let it sit. The old version of me would have opened it immediately, searching for validation. The new version finished his work, closed the laptop, and breathed. When I finally read the message, it was short. I heard you're doing well. I replied with equal simplicity. I am. No explanations. No edge, just truth. I placed the phone face down and returned to my notebook. Not to write about her, but to plan the next quarter, because the life I was building no longer revolved around rejection or regret. It revolved around intention, and somewhere between the early mornings and the late nights, I realized the biggest change wasn't visible on paper at all. I had stopped trying to become someone worthy of being chosen. I had become someone who chose himself. Chapter 3. The day I stopped explaining myself. Rejection doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly, through silence, distance, and the way someone stops believing in you before you even fail. After the night she walked away, life didn't magically improve. In fact, it became harder. The apartment felt emptier. The mornings felt heavier. There were days I stared at my phone, waiting for a message that never came, not an apology, not even anger. Just nothing. And that nothing hurt more than words ever could. I tried reaching out once, just once. Not to beg, only to explain. Her reply was short. I've moved on. You should too. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I realized I had spent years explaining myself to her, to my family, to friends, to people who never truly listened. Explaining my dreams. Explaining why progress takes time. Explaining why growth isn't instant. And suddenly I was tired. So I stopped. I stopped explaining why I stayed up late working on ideas no one believed in. I stopped explaining why failure didn't scare me anymore. I stopped explaining why walking alone felt better than walking with someone who doubted me. Instead, I focused. I took a second job, then a third freelance project. Nights blurred into mornings. Coffee replaced sleep. Doubt still visited, but it no longer lived inside me. Every rejection I faced became fuel. Every reminder of her disbelief sharpened my discipline. I didn't post about my struggles. I didn't announce my goals. I worked in silence. Months passed. The version of me she left behind no longer existed, but I didn't chase her to prove it. I promised myself something stronger. The next time she hears my name, it won't be through me. And for the first time since she left, I felt calm. Not hopeful, not angry, focused. Chapter 4. The First Public Win. By the 4th year after the divorce, my life no longer looked like the one she had left behind. I stood on the balcony of my downtown office, watching the city breathe below. Cars like veins of light. People rushing toward lives that mattered to them. This building wasn't just glass and steel. It was proof. Proof that quiet effort beats loud rejection. The startup I had joined, after the separation had exploded, faster than anyone expected. Not because I chased money, but because I chased competence. I learned to listen more than I spoke. I worked when others rested. And when failure came, I studied it like a teacher, not an enemy. That morning, my assistant handed me an invitation. A business innovation summit. National level. Media coverage confirmed. And there it was, at the bottom of the guest list. Her name. She was attending as the guest spouse of a mid-level consultant. Not a speaker. Not a decision maker. I didn't feel anger. I felt distance. The day of the event, I kept things simple. Dark suit, no designer logos. No need to announce myself. Confidence doesn't shout, it arrives. When I walked onto the stage, the room quieted. I spoke about rebuilding from failure, about losing everything that defined you, and discovering what actually matters. I didn't mention marriage. I didn't mention her. But every sentence carried weight forged in loss. Applause followed me off the stage. That's when I saw her. She stood frozen near the aisle. Eyes wide, not with jealousy, but with something heavier. Recognition. She hadn't expected this version of me. Later, as people congratulated me, she stayed where she was, watching, silent. She didn't approach. And I didn't look back. Because the greatest victory wasn't being seen. It was no longer needing to be. That night I went home alone, not lonely, but complete. And somewhere behind me, regret finally found its voice. Chapter 5. The moment she couldn't ignore. Success doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, then suddenly everyone hears it. By the time autumn settled over the city, my life no longer looked like the one she walked away from. The startup I had been building after the divorce, late nights, borrowed money, endless rejection, finally crossed the line from survival to momentum. A major client signed, then another. Then an article appeared online, calling our platform one of the fastest growing solutions in its space. I didn't celebrate, I just exhaled. For the first time in years, I felt steady. That was when she saw me again. It happened at a downtown business networking event, one I almost didn't attend. I was there to meet a potential partner, wearing a simple suit, no arrogance, no display. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Then the room shifted. I felt it before I saw her. She stood near the entrance, frozen, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. The man she once said would never change. I didn't look away. I didn't smile either. I was calm. She watched as people approached me. Handshakes, quiet respect, conversations filled with intent. She saw the way I listened, the way others leaned in, the way my name carried weight now. This wasn't luck. This was work she never believed I could do. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, the past tried to pull me back, arguments, doubt. The day she said she was leaving because she needed more. But the feeling didn't last, because I was no longer asking to be chosen. She took a step forward, then another. Stopped. I could see it on her face, the realization arriving too late. I hadn't changed for revenge. I hadn't changed to make her regret leaving. I changed because I finally believed in myself when no one else did. When the event ended, I walked past her without slowing down. She said my name softly. I didn't turn. Some victories don't need words. That night, as I stood alone on my balcony overlooking the city lights, I understood something clearly. Her regret wasn't my reward. My peace was. And for the first time since she left, I slept without carrying her doubt into my dreams. Chapter 6. Watching from the distance. Success doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, when you finally stop looking back. I stood inside my new office late one evening. City lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls. This building once belonged to a company that rejected me. Now my name was engraved at the entrance. I should have felt victorious. But instead I felt calm. That was when I saw her again. She was across the street, standing near a cafe window, pretending to scroll through her phone. But I knew that posture, the hesitation, the way she paused, hoping I might look her way. This time I didn't. Months ago, she walked away believing I'd never change. She believed comfort mattered more than patience, and appearances mattered more than effort. When she left, she thought she was choosing a better future. Now she was watching mine. I heard later, from mutual acquaintances, that she asked about me often. She wanted to know when it happened, how it happened, who helped me. The truth was simple. No one rescued me. No miracle appeared. I rebuilt myself piece by piece while she was busy doubting. That night, I left the office without turning back. I didn't need closure anymore. Some chapters don't end with conversations. They end with silence. And silence, when earned, is power. Chapter 7. The day regret finally spoke. The applause echoed through the hall long after the lights dimmed. I stood alone on the balcony of my new office, the city glowing beneath me like a living constellation. Years ago, this skyline had felt like a wall, too tall, too distant. Tonight, it felt like home. Success hadn't come loudly. It arrived quietly, through sleepless nights, broken habits, and lessons learned the hard way. And then she came back. I didn't hear her footsteps at first. I sensed the hesitation before she spoke. I didn't think you'd really change. I turned slowly. She stood there thinner, older, her confidence worn down by time and comparison. The woman who once walked away smiling now couldn't meet my eyes. I was wrong, she whispered. I see it now. Everything you built, I should have believed. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel victory. I felt peace, because the man standing before her wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I didn't change to be seen, I said calmly. I changed because I couldn't survive as the person you left behind. Tears filled her eyes, not dramatic, not loud, real, heavy. I lost you, she said. No, I replied gently. You chose a version of me that no longer exists. Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't awkward. It was final. She nodded slowly, understanding at last. Not everything broken is meant to be fixed. When she left, I didn't watch her go. I looked forward, toward the future I built without asking permission. Because sometimes the greatest ending isn't revenge. It's becoming someone regret can no longer reach.